So you're getting ready to build an ADU and you don't know what SDG&E wants of you. You don't know how to go about it. Hopefully this video will give you some insight and create a lot of answers for questions that you didn't even know you had. This is Emmanuel with Cabal Construction. Let's get into it. So back to the topic at hand, SDG&E, what do I do with them if I want to build an ADU? Generally speaking, the first thing you want to do if you're going to build an ADU is take a look at your existing electrical panel, okay? So what you want to do is you want to go into that puppy, open it up, and then you want to see if there's any space for an ADU. What does space look like? Well, typically a panel will have breakers in it, and where there's space, there are going to be available spaces. They'll usually just be gray slats with the metal still in them, and that's where you can actually fit more breakers and call for more amperage from your panel. The one thing to take into account is generally with older panels, they tend to not have as much ampage. I've seen some houses that only have 60 amps. A lot of houses will have 100 amps. If you have solar, then you've most likely already upgraded to a 200 amp panel, right? That should be enough to get you a breaker, especially if the panel already has 200 amps in it, to get you a large breaker that's big enough so that you can get a sub panel. Now, why do you need to know all this? Because if you can fit the sub panel for the ADU into your existing panel with a breaker, and you don't care to separate the utilities and the meter, then you're done. You don't have to deal with SDG&E. The only thing that you would need to do is when your ADU is going to pass inspection, they're going to have a specific inspection just for your panel. They're going to want all the breakers to be labeled. And these days they're asking that you use what are AFCI breakers. If you don't know what those are, it's basically like a GFCI outlet to a panel. So it would be a GFCI breaker for the panel. Okay, so to sum that part up, if you just need to put a sub panel for your ADU and you have the space for it in a panel that's large enough, then you should be fine. You don't need to deal with SDG&E. Now, a lot of times homeowners want to actually separate the electricity bill from the ADU for their existing panel. So that's when you need to put in a service request or a work request order with SDG&E. It's very simple. I'll put the link below. What you want to do is you want to get into SDG&E's website and you want to fill out an application to update the electrical on your existing residence. Now, you go through the entire website. It'll go through all the steps for you. Generally speaking, and SDG&E might not want me to tell you this, but just fill it out, get it completed. And if you're stuck on something, just bubble in stuff, okay? This might be horrible advice from SDG&E standpoint, but the main concern is you just want to get on their radar. What you will receive are some emails back saying, I need to know kilowatts, what you're adding, are you adding gas? They're going to ask you a series of questions. That's when it's time to get either your contractor involved or your architect involved so that they can give you the exact specifications that you want to give them in response. I'm shooting this video in June of 2023. Right now it's taking, I've seen some come in pretty quickly, about 3 to 4 weeks. I've seen some that are taking 3 months for SDG&E to respond. If you're going to separate your utilities, start that now. Once your service order is in and it's ready to go, the next thing you're going to get is a planner. SDG&E will assign a planner to your project, and that planner will start to reach out. You may have to send a few emails and say, hey, what's going on with my planner here and there? And then you'll get some response back, okay? Now, once the planner is assigned to you, they're going to come out and look at everything you have going on. Now, whether you have underground electrical already done, which means that your panel is being given power through conduits at the bottom and sticking down through your panel, and you don't have this weatherhead sticking up out of your roof with a line going all the way to the power line, then that means you have underground electrical. A lot of times though, and older houses in San Diego are going to have the traditional weatherhead that's sticking out of the roof and has the lines coming to it. There are some changes in code where these weatherheads are now not up to code. So now that you're going to be making changes, they're going to make you bring them up to code. In some cases, even if you're not separating your bill, but the weatherhead is intruding on the area where you're going to have to work, you're going to have to work with SDG&E for that. And they may have to even put up a temporary post so that as your contractor is doing the work, the power lines are not in the way for safety reasons, obviously. That's why it's important to have a planner involved. Everything is a case-by-case basis, and it's up to that planner to come by and decide how you want to go about doing that. It's always best to have your contractor at that meeting. Your contractor can actually say that they're willing to do some scope of work that the planner might not want to propose to you as the homeowner. Okay, so I'll give you a perfect example. We had a power line that was intruding right above where the ADU was supposed to go, so it was going to hit. Okay, now to make a long story short, what the planner was suggesting was that we put the new weatherhead on the ADU, okay, and then put what's called a 2-in-1 panel and then conduit all the way back to the house. What I said was, hey, well, what if we're willing to put the panel back on the house on the other side? Could you put what's called a mid-span, okay, that goes past the ADU but away from it and clears it? And they said they were fine with that. Now, the good thing about that is, guess what? Now, because SDG&E is not going to bill for that, it saved the owner money on having to conduit all that wire. So these are things that, as a contractor, it's always going to be helpful to have them in that meeting so that they can make those suggestions for you. I have one particular client right now that was adamant about making sure that his utilities be separated from that of his ADUs. He doesn't want any sort of problems or complications with dealing with having to bill as a third party, having to share the square footage with the tenant, and then if the tenant doesn't want to pay, he didn't want any sort of complications with that. So he was adamant about separating the utilities. Okay, so what we did there was we did all the steps that I just described to you earlier. We put in a service order. We had a planner come out. And then the planner was able to assist us with doing an underground run. So what that meant was we had to have SDG&E come out and inspect and tell us how they wanted to do some trenching from where the box was going to sit all the way to their actual power box. It was this huge, like 4x4 by 4 foot deep manhole that had to get dug. And so that was something that we had to do. But the good thing is that, guess what? SDG&E is involved. They're well aware of what's happening, and we don't have to get the city involved until it's time. So we were able to trench everything out, connect to the box, put another 2-in-1, get that to the meter. And then before connection and before power, we simply called out San Diego, the city, to make sure that they were happy with the way that we installed the 2-in-1 panel. So once they were able to clear that, we got back with SDG&E. SDG&E came, they powered up the 2-in-1 box. And then from there, we were able to go ahead and separate those to their existing, to their new sub panels. One was going to be for his primary residence, and the second was going to be for the ADU. Okay, so the best thing is for you to go ahead and start the process. That's the first thing you want to do, is if you're planning to separate utilities, or if you know that your new construction will be in the way of a weatherhead or the construction that's under it, then you want to just go ahead and submit a ticket. In fact, SDG&E might not want me to tell you this, but just start a ticket. Okay, you can always cancel it. You can always just say, oh, we're not going to go this route. But at least you get on their radar, because it does take some time, especially if you're still in the planning phases and you've got your plan submitted. It's a great time to do that now, because guess what? If there is a change and there is something you have to do, you can go ahead and submit that to the city now, and that way it's all planned out, it's all worked out before you even started construction. So to sum it up, unless you're absolutely certain that your existing panel has enough room and enough amperage to power your new ADU, then the best thing to do is to start a service request with SDG&E. Fill out the form as best as possible and wait for them to get back to you with more questions so that they can provide a planner to you. Once your planner is involved, get your contractor to have a meeting with them so that they can put a plan in place that takes care of everything you need them to take care of, but also minds your budget. Now, obviously, it's a lot of information and everything is on a case-by-case basis. And obviously, the reason why I do these videos is to spark up some business. So if you'd like, give me a call. My number is 760-410-4077. I've got all the dad jokes if you want to hear them. And call me. I can take a look at your address over Google. I can see if there's weatherheads or not. I can do a little bit of research, and I can even help you start a service request free of charge. Okay. Again, I'm Emmanuel with Cabal Construction. We are built on trust.